Hello and welcome to another episode of Fully Charged News, coming to you from sunny and slightly moist and sweaty Australia. But don't worry, I am not doing all Australian news this time. I might mention Australia, but this news is coming from all around the globe. Because I've just heard about this and it is very exciting. A quick update about Fully Charged live show in Sydney on the 11th and 12th of March, because it's incredible. It's beyond our wildest and most optimistic expectations. There's so much going to be happening there. There's so many cars that have not been seen before that will be on display. I mean, it's amazing what's going on. There's been this since Christmas, this real kind of wave of interest and companies getting in touch with us, people coming to come and talk at the show. It is going to be really, really impressive. Like the Fully Charged show? Then you will love our 6 live shows being held around the world in 2023, starting with Sydney, Australia on March the 11th and 12th. Good, okay, now let's get on with the news. Electricity consumers in the UK, that term, electricity consumers, is mainstream media talk for normal people like you and me, who happen to live in a house that has some electricity. Just saying. But we've been taking part in an interesting experiment. I've been taking part from here, but virtually in the UK. We have all been facing incredibly high electricity prices since the start of last year, when the little Mr. Putin man decided to make himself feel more manly by going and murdering some of his neighbours. So in an effort to reduce demand at peak times and therefore reduce energy costs for everyone, because this affects everyone, the less electricity we use at a peak time, the better for everyone. Energy companies like Octopus and now many others, and now even the grid operators themselves, are asking people to take part in what's called demand flexibility service. And all this means is generally somewhere between the hours of 4:30 in the afternoon and 6 p.m. in the evening in the UK on cold, dark evenings, if people don't run their washing machines, heat their water, run the tumble dryers, the ovens, all that stuff, boil a load of kettles at that time, charge an electric car, don't do it then we have to burn less dirty oil and gas and coal to generate electricity, and everyone benefits. Now, as always, if a couple of people did this, it would make no difference. If 10,000 people did it, maybe it might make a little bit of a dent in the energy demand. If 400,000 people do it, it makes a big difference, and that's how many people have been taking part in this. And it literally saves megawatts, 100 megawatts of power generation we don't need, which is the generating capacity of a gas or coal peaker plant. So it's a really good idea. Imagine we're burning that much less gas or coal at that point. You turn your kettle on at 7 after the peak. But that peak demand is the thing we're trying to shave the top of. And if you do this regularly, and you arrange to do it with your energy company, you actually save actual money. We've managed to shave £24 off our electricity bill this winter by literally doing nothing. I mean, it's easy for us because we've got a battery. Okay, but even if you haven't got a battery, it doesn't matter. It's still doing it. And my son is currently living in our house while we're in Australia, and he gets regular, and I mean regular, text messages from me saying, turn it off, switch it off, turn the light, shut it down, turn off the timer. As an annoying parent, it's my job. So we've always been used to this fluctuating demand and supply. And if we can reduce demand at peak times, that really helps. It's an interesting experiment. If, say, 4 million people did this, as was what I think will be happening, we will literally be turning off power generators at peak times because we won't need them. And obviously, if we've got a lot of renewables, we need a lot of batteries. And that should mean we have factories in countries all over the world churning out gigawatt hours of battery storage. And we had one that was starting to be built in the UK, but due to many, many different things, including a hopeless, self-serving government who've been in power for 13 years and still want to blame everyone else for everything that goes wrong, and are riddled with fossil fuel corruption. Other than that, this particular project fell apart. British Volt, it was called. It was a fantastic startup. I had high hopes for it, but due to many factors, Brexit, it didn't happen. And the people of the northeast of the UK who had a chance for really high levels of really high quality employment in that area will suffer. At least that's what it looked like until literally just now. Honestly, I've never done this before on a news episode, but this is literally news just in. An Australian company, of all places, where I am at the moment, called Recharge Industries, might revive this fledgling startup. They've just made a non-binding offer to restart the startup, which had actually started building its £3.8 billion factory in Blythe in Northumberland. Now, Recharge Industries, which is backed by a New York-based investment firm called
Scale Facilitators.
Sorry, I got that wrong. It's Scale Facilitations. That's amazing. What a name. Who do you work for?
I work for Scale Facilitation.
So they facilitate scaling up. Wonderful name. And they're also planning to build, the same company are planning to build a massive factory in Geelong, which is just outside Melbourne in Australia. So they're going to build a big factory here. That's already underway, but they are now planning on doing the same in the north of the UK. So that is possibly, that's all I'm saying, is possibly a good bit of news amongst the great big sea of gloom. Now, we're often hearing about problems in Germany, the problems it's having with its energy decisions over the past few years. A lot of criticism from people. They shouldn't have shut down the nuclear. And they certainly were in a right pickle because they were so reliant on gas coming in from Russia, which has now stopped completely. There's no gas coming from Russia, and Russia is not receiving any money for gas as a result of that. And now they've started this ridiculous coal mining savagery that's going on at the moment. It's just utterly stupid and they don't need it. But I just want to point out, that, because this stuff never gets in the news, Germany has generated record amounts of electricity from renewables in the past year. And no major news outlet ever mentions this. And they also never mention the fact that in Germany there are now officially over 1 million electric vehicles on the Straßes and Autobahns. To be accurate, it's 1,038,731 pure electric cars now on the roads of Germany. And this does not include hybrids or plug-in hybrids. This is 100% electric, over 1 million. And the electricity used to charge these cars is getting cleaner and is less reliant on imported gas and locally dug up coal, contrary to bitter, angry naysayers around the world. It's charged with coal. No, it isn't. And that is the difference we always need to remember and need to repeat endlessly whenever we get the chance. An electric car is not tied to any one type of fuel. It can charge off electricity from any source, any generating source. It will still work. You can put electricity in an electric car that comes from someone on a bike pedaling, if you want to, up to a nuclear power plant. That's how, and it will all work. It's fine. Might take quite a long time from someone on a bike pedaling. An electric car is therefore fuel agnostic. It does not care where the power comes from. A combustion car needs fuel from one source and one source only, and nothing else will work, and it's 100% reliant on that source. And if that source isn't constantly supplied in a secure way, then that car is useless. While we're looking at different countries and the uptake of electric vehicles, Ireland also saw electric car sales rise by 81% year on year, with a total of 15,462 new electric cars licensed for the first time in 2022. Ireland is not a big country. 15,000 new electric cars is amazing. Just over 15% of the total number of new cars registered. So honestly, I was at a conference in Dublin a few years ago, and it was less than 1% of cars were electric then. Now, I've recently taken part in a conference about the future uptake of electric vehicles and the knock-on effects it could have, both positive and negative, in the energy arena, in how you generate power in the grid and all that. Nothing surprising in that fact. I've attended many such events around the world in the last 10 years, but this conference was a bit different. It was based in Ghana, in Africa. Now, obviously, I joined virtually from Australia, but it's important to remember that this is really now a global phenomenon. And I just want to thank the amazing people behind this conference at African EV, beg your pardon. Their incredible enthusiasm and passion to develop Africa in a new and more sustainable direction is really, really impressive. They're just amazing people. It was such a joy to spend time with them. So I'm going to post links to them in the show notes along with all the other stories here. But the fossil lobbies and the sad lackeys who do their business will try and delay things. They will throw up obstacles and arguments, lies, bribery, corruption and FUD to keep their hands on the money and power they've grown used to. But they will eventually wither and fall by the wayside. Let them stew in their own bile and loathing. Ignore them and move on. Okay, now I said I wouldn't do too many stories about Australia. This is so big, it's fascinating. I had to slip this one in. Now, regular viewers will know we've occasionally been a little bit critical of Toyota and their hostility towards electric vehicles, something I must admit I find a bit baffling. Well, just recently, the boss of Toyota has actually stepped down and someone else has taken his place. I'm not necessarily saying that is related to their attitudes to electric cars, but that dude who's left really hates electric cars. Let's just leave it there. Whatever your attitude towards Toyota and their amazing car company, huge car company, really, really big, and no one would criticise the rugged reliability of the Toyota HiLux and Land Cruiser vehicles. I've driven both of them in this country and they are amazing, which are incredibly popular here in Australia. There's hundreds of thousands of them everywhere you look. So please allow me to now indulge in a bit of stereotypical Australiana. So picture this, it's hot as Hades outside, but sitting in an air-conditioned pub in a small town in Western Queensland, two blokes are sitting by the bar with a couple of schooners. One bloke turns to the other and he says, "Mate, what do you drive?" The other one says, "HiLux, mate." First one says, "Easy. Me, I drive a Land Cruiser, mate." The other one says, "Easy." It's in my fantasy world, that's what it's like. But it would have been accurate in about 1963. This country has moved on, believe me. So, brilliant vehicles made by Toyota, and guess what? They're all diesel. So, a company called SEA Electric, or C Electric, is partnering with Europe's Mevco in a landmark $1 billion deal to supply 8,500 Toyota HiLux and Land Cruiser vehicles to the mining industry. Well, so what? Well, these are 100% electric conversions. Not one or two specialist high-end conversions done in small workshops by amazing teams of really creative people. We know many people like this. No, this is 8,500 of these four-wheel drive cars. Now, I'm sure the billion-dollar investment isn't just to convert 8,500 vehicles. You know, that would mean they cost sort of over $115,000, $117,000 per vehicle, which it won't cost that much. It's an investment in the industrialization and automation of the conversion process. So in Australia, over 250,000 HiLux vehicles were sold in 2022, 250,000 diesel pickups. So there's plenty of vehicles here to be converted to electric drive. And, why would the mining industry be in the least interested in using plug-in electric vehicles in remote mines in this vast land? I'll tell you why. Because they're easier to maintain, much, much cheaper to run, and the companies that are running the mines can generate their own fuel on site. They don't have to have a big tanker coming in, like 1,000 kilometers across the desert to bring them a bit of fuel so they can run their silly old diesel engines. They are rapidly adopting this stuff. I have mentioned it before, but this is amazing. 8,500. This is confusing. Old automotive behemoth is sending out slightly conflicting messages. General Motors in America has just announced it's investing $1 billion. Everyone's investing $1 billion in something. They're investing $1 billion in manufacturing facilities for EV components and V8 engines. What? What? It sounds good. It sounds vaguely reasonable until you realise that 10% of that $1 billion is going towards the EV components and 90% towards the V8s. It's so weird, this story, because GM already makes loads of V8 engines. So what do they need to spend that money on? The American auto industry is the motherland of the V8. I mean, I love it. I love the sound a V8 makes. There's loads of them in Australia. I'm hearing them all the time. But they are a bit dated and old-fashioned. They're a bit like steam engines from the 1880s. Beautiful machines. What's the point? Really inefficient, really heavy, really sluggish. Anyway, so Sure, they can sell V8s till the cows come home, but GM have been shouting about how they're going to convert to EVs and it's all going to be amazing, and EV this and EV that and the Hummer and all that stuff. And they've been going like that for the last decade. Forgive me for being a little bit confused about this, spending all that money to develop new V8s. What are they going to be, V8 electric motors? No, they're not. So this story's been going around quite a lot recently. As far back as the early 1970s, when I had long hair down to my scrawny arse and rode around on a bicycle and refused to go in cars because I thought they were fascist. That's how long ago it was. Companies like Exxon, but Exxon in particular, along with coal and gas companies, knew with incredible accuracy what the effects of burning their products would bring to the world. In 2015, investigative journalists discovered internal company memos indicating that Exxon has known since the 1970s that fossil fuel products could lead to, and I quote from the original Exxon report, dramatic environmental effects before the year 2050. Additional documents emerged showing that the US oil and gas industry's largest trade association had likewise known since at least the 1950s, as had the coal industry since at least the 1960s, and electric utilities, Total Oil Company and GM and Ford Motor Companies since at least the 1970s. They all knew this. They had seen the reports. They paid for the reports. They paid the scientists to do the research. And scholars and journalists have analysed the text containing these documents, providing quantitative accounts of fossil fuels' interests, knowledge of climate science and its implications. So they knew. And one thing we've learned from the revelations is that big oil, gas and coal companies really know how to hire the best scientists, really good scientists, because their predictions made back in the 1970s have proven to be chillingly accurate. Next story. It's a Tesla story, and it's got nothing to do with Elon Musk. But I'm finding it really refreshing that for a while now you can read a story about Tesla, positive or negative, and no one mentions old musky pants. Isn't that wonderful? Anyway, Tesla have recently reduced their prices of their cars in China, which quickly resulted in a big spike in sales. They have now reduced their prices in Europe and the USA, and not by like $100 or $500 or a special bonus pack of $750 or anything like that. The price drops are for the Model 3 and the Model Y. So the base rear-wheel drive Model 3, for example, has dropped by around £5,000 in price, with the biggest reduction in the base version of the Model Y. Well, that's down by £8,000 or €9,100. I think that's quite a substantial price drop. Even the high-end models have seen price drops, but the big question has to be why? Why are Tesla doing this now? They haven't made a statement about it, so as you might be able to imagine, speculation among the millions of Tesla fans is rife. Could it be that the likes of BYD, NIO, XPeng, Nissan, who else is doing a lot of electric cars? Let's leave it there. Mainly China and South Korea. Those sales are starting to have an impact. But they are making millions of electric cars, and these cars are really popular, and they're generally much cheaper than Teslas, and they're going to be much cheaper than Teslas in Europe and Australia, where people want them and where these cars are arriving. BYD Atto 3 all over the shippity shop. It's pretty clear that Tesla are making, and importantly, selling millions of cars a year. I've just seen that Tesla are hiring between 200 and 300 new employees every week for their factory in Berlin, Germany, where they already employ over 9,000 people. Just imagine if Tesla had decided to build that factory in the UK and it was now employing 9,000 people. Just saying. Anyway, I want to remind myself and everyone watching that 20 years ago, this company literally did not exist. In January and February of 2003, 20 years ago, there was not a company called Tesla. It did not exist. July this year will be Tesla's 20th anniversary. And that's an incredible reminder of how fast things can change. In 2022, Tesla made and sold 1,313,000 cars. Just 5 years ago, they only sold 250,000. They are either extending their existing manufacturing centres or building new ones around the world, and they are installing an amazing, reliable, easy-to-use charging network around the world. We all know this, but I'm kind of reminding myself of just the impact that this car company has had. No matter what you think of the cars, no matter what you think about brand loyalty or how the boss is a bit of an embarrassing liability every now and then, we have to acknowledge Tesla's central role in bringing forward the transition to electric ground transport and away from burning toxic fossil fuel in combustion engines in vehicles. Just imagine, if you go back 20 years, literally 20 years, go back to 2003 and you stand in front of the board members and the bosses of Volkswagen, Ford, GM, Fiat, Honda, Toyota, BMW, Mercedes. 20 years ago, you stand in front of them, you go, in 20 years' time, there will be a new car company that will run rings around you, and against all the odds, it will radically change the technology of ground transport. They would, very sensibly, and I wouldn't even criticise them for it, have laughed you out of the room. They would not have believed what has taken place in the last 20 years. But it has taken place, and they have got to change, and I am suggesting to them they need to change very, very quickly. Anyway, that's all. Do please subscribe to the Fully Charged Show. Do please subscribe to the Everything Electric Show. Both these channels are doing very well. Check out all the information about our live shows this year, 6 of them coming up on fullycharged.show, probably /live, something like that, but you'll find it there. It's all very easy to find. If you want to look at the Patreon link, please feel free to do so. We still are hugely grateful to our enormous collection of Patreon supporters. It's amazing that people do it. It really does help us to make all the shows you're seeing that we're putting out. And all the links will be in the show notes beneath this episode. And as always, if you have been, thank you for watching. So if you're down under, get down to the ICC in Sydney this March for the very first Fully Charged Live Australia. We will have almost every EV available, more than 40 live sessions plus all our usual attractions including the Home Energy Advice Team, the Electric Launchpad, Electric Alley, Micro Machines and test drives too. Get your tickets to see myself, Elliot Richards and some newer faces at Fully Charged Live Australia.